Hello, my name is Chris McDonald. I'm a licensed therapist and yoga teacher. For those that don't know me, I help therapists bring yoga into their therapy sessions ethically, safely, and effectively, helping to bridge that gap between the therapy world, the yoga world, and bringing them both together in a safe and ethical way. It can be very challenging for therapists to bring yoga in their therapy room. As licensed clinicians, it can be hard to do to go move from regular traditional talk therapy, sitting in our chairs, to how do we move into movement practice? How do we move into breath practice? How do we introduce it? How do we do it ethically so that we are not in trouble with our licensing boards, which I totally get. And by the way, if you're having these questions, you are not alone. And that is why had created my podcast, Yoga in the Therapy Room. And part of what I do is help therapists with these questions. But I want to bring some myth busting in today because I do get a lot of questions from listeners and followers on YouTube who have these similar questions. There's like a common thread amongst, so I wanted to bring that in. So the first one was, and I wrote it down. Do I need 200 yoga teacher training in order to bring yoga in the therapy room? Which is a great question. And you think about yoga teachers, that is often what they're required to teach, let's say at a yoga studio, um, RYT, which is registered yoga teacher. You've heard of 200 hours. It's usually when people start at that training, and then they can build up to 500 hours to 1,000. And then if they want to be what's called a yoga therapist, that's over 1,000 and a whole lot of hours that I have not done yet. So, but we're not talking about that kind of therapist. So 200 hours is where it starts for yoga teachers. But I'm here to tell you and bust that myth that no, you do not need that to start bringing yoga in your therapy room. Now, later down the road, should you consider it, it's a possibility. Here's what I have learned along the way is that you need to embody these practices before you start. So, how can you really notice how yoga feels for you? If you have not started to go to classes, do it now. Go to lots of different teachers, try some online, in person, maybe even go to a retreat, but go as the student, not the teacher. So you're trying to learn different yoga practices and what kind of flow, what yoga feels good for you. Because guess what? There's lots of different types of yoga. That's the thing to consider. One size does not fit all. And if you learn some yoga and you're like, oof, I would feel uncomfortable bringing that in my therapy room, then you can just check it off that you tried it. And that's going to bring you closer to what you do want. So that's the important thing. Now, if you have, let's say you have zero training, totally cool. That's everybody's got to start somewhere, right? So bringing in mindfulness grounding exercises, I find that you don't need a lot of training for those. You may already be bringing those in, right? So guess what? If you're already doing mindfulness and grounding practices, you are bringing yoga in the therapy room. So congratulations. But that is a good entryway and it can be more palatable for many clients because I know lots of therapists worry about how our client's going to react. Are they going to be like, what? Yoga? I don't want to do that. But that can be a nice bridge. And saying it as mindfulness or grounding and not yoga can be a little bit easier entry point for you. Now, is it important to get some training for those? Yes. You don't have to go 200 hours. You can just do some training on your own, do some practices, see what aligns, and start simply with that. Now, let's say that you do want to bring some breathing practice, which is yoga, by the way. So if you already teach breath work with clients, you are bringing yoga in the therapy room. Yay. So just know that there's different parts of yoga. There's different 8 limbs of yoga. We're not getting into that today, but breath work is one, meditation. So if you're already doing meditation, there you go. There's some yoga. And then, of course, asana is what I think people think of with yoga, mostly because it's like, ooh, how do I go from talk therapy to movement to yoga poses? What is that like? And how do I know if I have enough training for that? Now, as you move into breath work, into meditation, you do want to get some training. And I can't say you need X, check the box for training. You need it enough so that you feel competent enough that you feel confident enough. And does that happen right away? No, that's the other piece of this. You need to practice, practice, and practice in order to really start to develop that flow with it in session and what that could feel like, look like, sound like. It takes some time. And the number one question I always get, of course, is how do I introduce it? One thing to think about, how do you introduce other interventions? Really think of what you've brought in before. Sometimes it is just, I'm noticing that you're really struggling with this repetition with this thought in your mind. I wonder if we could try something. Would you be open to trying a grounding practice to maybe bring some ease into the body? Just like that, right? So be able to align with what they're struggling with first. And maybe here's a solution. We could try something. And then what could be the result? So putting those three together is one way to bring the introduction in to that. So get some training. Now, if you want to bring movement in, it's important to start with some training. You don't have to have the 200-hour. I do have a yoga basics training that can get you started. It's a digital, self-paced, all on your own. Um, it's 12 hours and you can get started with that. There might be some other ones too, even shorter than that, just to kind of get your feet wet, dip your toe in, see how it goes. It can be really helpful to be able to bring that in. Another question do I have to call it yoga? I like yoga practices now that aligns with a lot of things I just talked about. No, you don't. So you can call it mindfulness, like we talked about. You could call it grounding, resourcing, connecting to present moment awareness. So there's lots of ways you can bring in, or even just somatic practice. Let's try somatic practice. That's it, right? If clients have negative connotations to the word yoga, then don't use it. You don't have to, there's no law that says, you must use the word yoga with asana. No, you don't. Do what feels right for you, what's in alignment with you as a therapist, and what's in alignment with your clients. What would be better? You know your clients. I don't know your clients. See what would feel right and kind of go from there. And maybe experiment, maybe try some of the language. And if it doesn't feel right when you're bringing it in like somatic, then, and clients are like, I don't know, makes me uncomfortable. So figure out what is the ease point for this. And I hope this was helpful. I'm going to be bringing in more mist busting videos so that we can explore some of these frequently asked questions with yoga in the therapy room. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit subscribe for more content. And I'll be also be adding yoga practices on a regular basis on this YouTube channel. I hope you have a wonderful day.